What does it mean to be American? To start, our country was founded on a Bill of Rights and has been changed with amendments over time to further define what it means to be American. Through the accumulations of these rights, being American means everyone has equal rights. For anyone to be able to vote or not be discriminated against, for you to be able to worship any religion or none at all, and marry whoever you choose. Not everyone used to be treated equally. Only white men could vote or own land. Women could only wear dresses, and they couldn't vote or get a proper job. In the not-so-distant past, women were unable to hold jobs or professions because they were less likely to get hired or paid properly. In the early 1900s, the acceptable jobs for women were factory labor, domestic work, teaching, and writing. They were excluded from all professions other than writing and teaching. In the 19th and 20th centuries, medicine practice became more common for everyone. In the beginning, it was very uncommon to see female doctors. Only 5% of American doctors were female in 1890, but in 1980, 17% of doctors were female, with the other 83% being men. Now, as of 2015, female doctors in the United States was 34%. Also, 24 female CEOs lead companies on the Fortune 500. No matter how far our country has gone from not letting women work at all, they are still paid 1/3 of what a man would get paid.
One, women's issues aren't separate from economic issues or vice versa. Paying women equally for comparable work done by men would be the biggest economic stimulus this country could possibly have. The Institute for Women's Policy Research tells us that paying women of all races equally to white men would put $200 billion more into the economy every year and would be way more effective than propping up banks and Wall Street, because this money would get spent, not put into Swiss bank accounts. It would create jobs and help the poorest kids, who are those who depend on a mother's income.
Women also weren't allowed to vote. Only the men in their house could vote, so the women hope they will vote for who they want to win. In the 1920s, women were able to vote because of the 19th Amendment. People of color were also unable to vote until 1870, when the 15th Amendment was passed, allowing men of color to vote. Before 2013, people of the same sex could only be recognized as married in 9 states. In 2013, there were 2 women who were married in New York and were recognized as married by the state of New York. But when one of the women died and in her will gave most everything to her wife, the federal court couldn't recognize them as married and was going to make her pay for her wife's belongings. This woman took the federal government to court and went all the way to the Supreme Court. She won, and they had to make a law stating that the federal government would have to recognize that they were married. This was before same-sex marriage was legalized in all states. On July 9, 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed. It required the state to recognize same-sex marriage in their state, as well as licensed marriage in the state. From practically the beginning of America, rich people had slaves. Now we know that it had been awful treatment and a terrible idea altogether, but in the moment they didn't seem to care. In 1641, the first slave laws were passed, basically confirming that it'll be a very long time until they are free again. Slaves were extremely popular when they had high demand for cotton, tobacco, indigo, and rice. In the late 1700s, the cotton gin was created, causing an even higher demand for cotton. In 1783, slavery was abolished completely in Massachusetts. On January 31st, 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed, freeing all slaves. African Americans still couldn't own land, vote, and weren't treated equally. Even though we have come a long way in equality, we still have a long way to go. Our prisons are overcrowded, which creates a fiscal burden on states. A 2016 report by the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU School of Law concluded that 40% of the U.S. population are behind bars without a compelling public safety reason. There are roughly 219,000 women in prison, and many of them are victims of domestic abuse. As many as 90% of the women in jail for killing men have been abused by those men. People of color account for 37% in the U.S. population, yet they represent 67% of the prison population. Black men are almost 6 times more likely to be put in jail as white men, and were given prison sentences that were 19% longer than that of white men with similar crimes. We had our first black president, Barack Obama, in 2008. We had a woman, Hillary Clinton, run for president as the Democratic nominee in 2016.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
I hope I get to see the day when a woman is elected President of the United States.